How do people find meaning in the modern day? Meaning is very fleeting. Some people have deep, meaningful experiences, and then a few years later, they realize it means nothing. Often, this false sense of meaning happens after people go through a psychotic break, or people go through this DMT/drug fueled experience where they get deep senses of meaning, they get deep senses of purpose, but that purposeness is clarity for a moment, but it's not meaningful in reality. I know this because I've experienced something like, not that I'm a drug user or I'm a tweaker or I'm an insane person, but I have experienced a fleeting sense of meaning where I felt like the world was figured out. That never happened. Now, I want to talk about this important topic, the death of meaning. What does it mean to have a sense of meaning? And why are so many people losing this sense of meaning? You know, there's this idea where someone takes an ayahuasca trip, or this, like, these bit high-powered business founders go on an ayahuasca trip, and venture capitalists hate that because when venture capitalists see that, they take it, they're like, they end up being like this person who's like, oh, I'm finally self-actualized. I realized what my true calling in life is, and it's not to create shareholder value. So, and that's super funny because it comes to the crux of the issue that people have senses of meaning that are altered and then destroyed and then replaced with something else. They find deep, meaningful experiences, or they find meaning through work or through family or through something. And later they figure out, what does it mean if I'm not getting anything out of it, or something like that? Or, you know, what does it mean if my children hate me? Or what does it mean if my siblings hate me if I do all these things for them, or something like that? So why I'm saying this is that meaning can be very fleeting. Having meaning one moment can be completely rebuffed in the next. Meaning is this feeling, it's this nebulous era, and there was an idea of civilizational senses of meaning that civilization had. You know, Christian civilization was created, so was Islamic, and so was Jewish and Abrahamic traditions to serve and obey God. Confucian was to preserve the family. There were multiple senses of different philosophies, like for example, Buddhism is like this kind of escape the matrix. You have to end suffering through ending desire, and this aspect of finding meaning through these things is in itself a desire. We have a death of meaning today because there's no shared narrative. You know, even the Christian religion has gone through reformation and, you know, continuous sects coming through having different interpretations of Christianity. The same is true for philosophies like Marxism. Our end goal is to make egalitarianism and freedom and egalitarianism and ending the class hierarchy and ending state power. But no one has an agreement on the sense of how to do that, mainly because no one has a shared narrative. And this decline of meaning in society comes from a lack of a shared narrative. We lack so many things. We lack a sense of agency. We lack a sense of meaning. We lack a sense of shared responsibility. We lack a sense of fidelity. All of these things are caused by a fundamental lack of meaning. So how do we get this meaning back? As I said, meaning is fleeting, but there is this sense of life satisfaction, and there's this sense of civilizational self-confidence. And although it can be found by having a shared sense of meaning, which is fleeting, it can also be done by having a shared sense of value. But how do we know which values are right? It's interesting. Some people say the right values are those that maximize freedom, or the right values are those that maximize human flourishing, whatever that means. Or the right sense of values are those that maximize pleasure and happiness. I don't have the answer to this, but I know that we can get into the right direction once we start asking the right questions. Sense of meaning can be restored. The loss of meaning can be restored, but it can only be done with the right set of value, the right set of sense of spirituality, a return to a more, not enlightened, because enlightened isn't the right term. We had this sense of enlightenment, which is this sense of like knowledge, but there's no salvation through knowledge, and there's no salvation through secrecy or something like that. I would say it's a sense of wonder, you know, not being this pharisaical or this type of person who thinks we have it all figured out, or we know how the world is and we know everything about the world and there's nothing new to be discovered. All we have to do is debate about what's the best way to do things. No, it comes through having new discovery, having new senses of wonder. There is always a frontier, and believing that there is always a frontier is the first step of restoring civilizational self-confidence and civilizational senses of meaning. There is always a frontier, new worlds to conquer. Even if there is this idea that your people or your culture is in decline, you can always expand your culture through implementing a new sense of wonder, living like you're living in a colonial project, things like that. So this sense of meaning can be restored through a sense of wonder. And having a sense of wonder is all about having a sense that you can do anything, that anything is possible. One of my biggest anger and frustration comes from these, I call them science trademark or science TN people, because they're the type of people who are like so enmeshed in trust the science and like trust authority, and they're deferential towards technocrats. But in reality, there are no experts. Anyone can come in and contribute to a new domain of knowledge or an existing domain of knowledge. It's unlikely for things that are more developed and things that are more esoteric. But as the price of intelligence reaches zero, soon anyone can contribute to science. All they need is access to AI or to discover questions and run studies, scientific studies using the help of AI and modern practices. This sense of wonder is what I'm trying to restore in society. I'm trying to get, as like, there's this quote that I made in Threads, and I'm trying to get the atheists to be more spiritual, and I'm trying to get the Christians to be more rational. And by Christians, I mean evangelicals. But the point is, I'm trying to get people towards a happy middle where there's a sense of wonder, but it is supported by facts. People don't have that anymore. They think either all the world is discovered, the world is like this, we know this, and this is how the world is going to end. We all know this because the Bible said so. When in reality, there's room for interpretation. There's room for discovery. There's room for new knowledge. Another thing that I think the Pentecostals got right, but the more established religions got wrong when it comes to this sense of meaning, is that there's this idea that in like Catholic and Muslim and like various traditional religions, ideas that there are no prophets, there are no new divine revelation, there is no continuous revelation, everything is done, things are closed, there's no new religious movements that can happen. And it's a sad thought because it completely closes the door to any new spiritual interpretations that are the natural outgrowth of current beliefs. The Orthodox have the biggest problem with this because they can't respond to modern issues, and you have different interpretations depending on which church you go to on modern problems, because there's this idea that there's no revelation, there's no new problems, there's no new anything. That fundamentally kills the sense of wonder that I'm talking about. We need to fix this. And in order for society to fix this, there needs to be a new wave of spiritual outgrowth among the irreligious, and a new wave of rationalism among the religious. I don't know the solutions to this, but I hope that this helps. Thank you.